Manx Radio's Update with Beth Espy.
Well, first am I, good evening. It's Friday. How has your week been? Welcome to Update, where you can catch up on all the news that's been happening in half an hour. Lots to come on the programme tonight, including the latest on the story we've been following all week about Manx Care's decision to cut the number of operations it does every week to save money. Also coming up, a Manx Radio investigation looks into why residents at a sheltered housing complex are being charged commercial gas rates, and we'll find out what's happening at the Palace Hotel. As ever, we've also got one eye on the roads, air and sea for any potential traffic or travel disruption. And if there's anything you'd like to contact us about, you can text 166 177 or email studio@manxradio.com. First, let's join Christian for a roundup of the main news headlines.
Manx Care says it's implemented nearly 200 other cost-saving schemes before touching frontline services. The healthcare provider has come under fire this week after reducing the number of operations as part of efforts to reduce its overspend. MHK Claire Christian thinks government is out of touch with the challenges Manx residents are facing when it comes to housing. It's after the Infrastructure Minister said it's impossible to calculate a market value for affordable housing. One of the island's biggest function venues, the Palace Hotel in Douglas, says it's going to stop taking conference and large event bookings from early next year, citing a drop in the number of bookings. Meanwhile, the lodge in Glen Helen has also announced it'll close its doors for the final time on Sunday. The founder of Beach Buddies has pledged to start doing serious investigations into people who fly tip. The Manx charity says its beach cleaning containers are being abused by people dumping domestic waste, cat litter and even electronic equipment. And 11 barrels of Manx rum produced by the Fenodry distillery, which has been aging for a year in oak bourbon casks in the Tower of Refuge, will be brought ashore in the coming days. The Refuge Manx rum takes its name from the iconic tower built by Sir William Hillary, who founded the RNLI. In international news, the Israeli military says 2 of its soldiers have been killed in combat in northern Israel. It's understood they died in a drone attack from Iraq on a base in the Golan Heights. The head of the Royal Navy has apologised after a report into alleged misconduct on board submarines found evidence of misogyny and bullying. An internal inquiry was launched after a whistleblower said there was sexual assault within the submarine service. A Manchester United co-owner, Sir Jim Radcliffe, says a decision on manager Erik ten Hag's future is not my call. He's told the BBC it's down to the management team running the club to decide if he should stay in the role. Those are the updated news headlines, next at 6.
Thank you very much, Christian. Now the weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Cloudy with a few outbreaks of rain this evening and overnight. There'll be fresh to strong southerly winds and minimum temperatures will be around 10. Any rain to start tomorrow will soon clear to allow bright or sunny spells to develop. Fresh southeast winds, temperatures reaching 16, but then there will be rain developing overnight into Sunday, and there will be rain and drizzle for much of Sunday. It will clear later in the day. Sunset this evening 6:46, sunrise tomorrow morning 7:28.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
SMS Trading have moved to 3 St Paul's Square, Ramsey. For flat pack to fully built, new or second-hand furniture, SMS Trading offer all-island delivery and man-in-a-van service. Call 315151 or find SMS Trading on Facebook.
See the island like you've never seen it before on an incredible chauffeur-driven trike tour. A unique way to make memories that will last a lifetime. Gift vouchers available too. See iomtriketours.com for details and booking.
A great night's sleep got even better with Zed's Bedding Store. From quality Beldorm bed linen and mattress protectors, fleece and woven throws to luxury duvets from the fine bedding company. Zed's Bedding Ramsey, next to Isle of Man Bank.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode Estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
You're listening to Update here on Manx Radio, 4.5 minutes past 5. Well, it's the story we've been following all week. Manx Care's decision to cut the number of operations carried out a week in a bid to save money. Well, Siobhan is with me now. Siobhan, you've been reporting on the developments as they've unfolded. Would you just bring us up to speed with where we are now, starting with how it all began in the first place, please?
Yeah, Beth, so this all started last weekend when our news editor Sean spotted that a response to a written question had been published on the Tynwald website. In it, Oncon MHK Julie Edge had asked the Health and Social Care Minister how many theatre operating sessions have been cancelled in each clinical specialty in each year since the Manx Care Board was created, and what plans there are to reduce theatre operating sessions in the 2024-25 financial year. Laurie Hooper produced a 3-page response, and buried in the second-to-last paragraph, it was revealed that from mid-September this year, Manx Care are reducing the number of elective theatre lists by 5.5 per week on average. That's a reduction from 30 to 24.5 as part of their plan to recover the overspend, and it's intended to save an estimated £220,000 for the latter 6 months of this financial year. So we published a story on this, and then we spoke to Miss Edge, who said she was concerned by the revelation.
My concern for anybody with a health issue that they're waiting is now they're going to be waiting longer, and we've invested so many millions into reducing waiting lists in certain areas. Here we are we going to create another one? And then there'll be a call for, we need extra money, we've got a waiting list. So I find it quite alarming that services to our people are being reduced, but we've not seen any tangible reductions in any other areas.
Now, the Isle of Man Medical Society told us that they only found out about the move from our story, saying they had no prior warning that this was coming. And so, in response to the story, the Society sent a blistering letter to the Manx Care Board, Laurie Hooper, and the Chief Minister, Alfred Cannon. They also sent a copy to us. In it, they described reducing elective surgery as a misguided effort to save money, saying it will exacerbate the already significant backlog of operations which people are waiting for. So I sat down with them, and Dr. Sean Crerand had this to say.
If you reduce the number of operations or the frequency of our operations by 25%, which is the proposed cut, then what will happen is that patients will be waiting, inevitably they will be waiting longer for the surgery. And of course, the longer they're waiting, the more complicated their conditions get. So what might have been a relatively straightforward operation at the beginning could turn into be quite a complex operation.
Now, yesterday, I sat down with the Chief Executive of Manx Care, Teresa Cope. I put to her the various critiques we've heard from the Isle of Man Medical Society, Miss Edge, and indeed the many comments we've had in from our listeners. She told me this was an unpalatable decision which the board didn't want to make, and said they've made 195 interventions elsewhere before cutting frontline services. I asked her if this was something of a political football, basically that Manx Care knows this is going to be unpopular with the public, so is this move designed to provoke politicians into action? She told me that is categorically not the case.
This absolutely isn't used as a political football. There are over 195 saving schemes running concurrently in Manx Care to help deliver those £19 million worth of savings that we need to do. We are all very careful to choose the schemes that will ultimately have the least impact. It is disappointing when that's levelled, and it's disappointing when that comes from politicians. I've taken the opportunity to brief politicians on this. There is a responsibility on us all to make the best decisions and to do that responsibly and to not alarm the public. And we take that role very, very seriously. Reducing and delaying, putting a potential 2 to 3 month delay in elective surgery is one of those difficult decisions, but against a risk based of all of the decisions that potentially could be made, this one is one of the least impactful. I find it really concerning that there is a view that Manx Care would do this as a political gesture to have the most impact. It absolutely isn't. We take our responsibilities really seriously. Comin have made it absolutely clear to us that we have to come back into balance, and that's why we've deliberated over a wide range of schemes.
Chief Executive of Manx Care, Teresa Cope. You can hear the full newscast of that interview at manxradio.com. Now, we're going to hear from the Health Minister, Laurie Hooper, on Monday's breakfast programme. In the interest of fairness, his interview is going to go out in the same time slot as all the others that we've heard so far this week. We have also, I should say, invited the Treasury Minister, Dr. Alex Allinson, to speak to us as well. And then next Thursday, that's the 10th of October, Siobhan will have a special Island Life programme at 5:30 where we will hear from all parties involved in one place. So a lot to follow with this story, but we will keep you up to date with the very latest. 5:10 now. A pensioner from Ramsey is calling on Isle of Man Energy to meet with members of the housing board where he lives to reduce the price of gas. Eric Corkish pays £47 a week for his 2-bedroom apartment in the sheltered housing complex Mayfield. And if you calculate that over 4 weeks, that is close to £200 a month. Well, Chanel Suku has been following this story. She joins me now. Chanel, how did we first hear about this?
Well, Beth, Mr. Corkish contacted me recently with some of his concerns. He showed me copies of his bills that others had from 1-bedroom apartments had, and also copies of gas bills belonging to people living outside the sheltered housing complex, but who also live very nearby. And it certainly seemed to highlight some stark differences. It seems that during the summer months, the households outside the complex are billed around £50 or so in a period of around 6 weeks. However, Mr. Corkish and the other 40 or so residents from Mayfield are paying close to £50 a week. Eric says these are all of these people are over the age of 65.
If you're in your house, if you don't use the heat, you're not being charged for it because your gas bill isn't going and your boiler's not going. But all through the summer, most of the people in these sheltered housing units, they're not using the heat in this, but we're still paying £50 a week for it. They claim that because you've got a community room and you've got hallways, it's not purely residential. But if you look at it, commercial, when you're doing something commercial, you're making a profit. The sheltered housing people don't make a profit, and it just seems to all revolve around that. And everybody's just aghast at the amount of money we're having to pay for heating. We need to be paying something that's realistic. I mean, to pay £200 a month for heating in what is a small apartment, we're paying a fair rent, we pay our rates, but we should not be being ripped off just so that we can have heat in the premises.
So, of course, Beth, I then had to verify the information that I got from Mr. Corkish, and I did this by contacting officials who, of course, I won't name, in Ramsey, and they confirmed that the housing board are being charged at a commercial rate instead of a residential rate.
So did you find out why that was, Chanel?
Well, as the housing board is the customer of Isle of Man Energy, they are seen as a commercial unit, and hence they are being charged as that. However, it does raise a question around, should older people living in such complexes being paying that rate? Mr. Corkish told me that they pay their bills. They're not asking for a special payment rate. Rather, they just want to be able to pay the same amount that every other household is paying because they are residents, not a business.
And have you contacted the Housing Board and Isle of Man Energy about this?
Well, I have reached out to both. At this time, the Housing Board told me that they will not be commenting. However, a statement sent to us by Isle of Man Energy says in this instance, the customer is the sheltered housing provider rather than the individual residents. This means it is a commercial customer and is charged as such.
Well, Chanel, thank you very much. And you can hear the full interview with Eric Corkish again in the latest episode of the Manx Radio newscast at manxradio.com. And I think this is a great example of if there is a story happening in your area, do get in touch with us, newsroom at manxradio.com, and it'll certainly be something we'll consider following up. 13 minutes past 5. One of the Isle of Man's premier venues has signalled its intention to stop taking conference and large event bookings from early next year. The Palace Hotel says a significant drop in the number of bookings for large gatherings has been evident since COVID. Also, costs associated with holding such events have soared. Brett Martin is the chief executive of Palace Holdings and says the main function space at the front of the hotel is going to be reconfigured to meet changes in demand. He's been talking to Simon Richardson.
Well, we've seen quite a significant fall in demand since the pandemic, to be honest, Simon. I think quite a lot of corporate businesses have kind of stepped out of that space now. So, with a big room like Cushag, which can hold 250 50 people, you need a steady throughput to make sense of it. So we're not really seeing that so much these days. And the second area obviously is cost. Costs have spiraled since the pandemic. Minimum wage has gone up by 40%. It's due to go up by another 20% if it's harmonised with living wage next spring. That really puts the Isle of Man probably is the highest minimum wage in the world. And it's very difficult where you haven't got the economies of scale. The Isle of Man doesn't have that to make that work in when you're just doing a regular business like conference and events. So we really want to focus on the more stable and steady business of general food and beverage through the Lukey's Lounge Bar and through the Paragon restaurant.
I guess it marks the end of an era in a way, Brett, because for many years the Palace has been possibly the premier location for all manner of large gatherings.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I mean, going back through the years, 10 or 15 years ago, we would be busy both at the Palace and the Sefton. We'd have effectively two gangs servicing that requirement. Obviously, the financial shock of around 2010-11, the financial market shock, probably a reprofiling of the island's economy since then, the pandemic, all of those things have conspired to make the big sort of conference and events type functions far less popular than they used to be.
As you say, COVID changed many aspects of our lives. It also saw huge rises in costs, particularly, it seems, for hospitality businesses. So this is a reshaping largely based on that fact, is it?
Yes. I think that hospitality businesses these days have to focus on where they are staff intensive. They also need to be customer intensive. So you need a steady 10, 15 hour sort of cycle of busyness, if you like, to make it work. The days where you could take a big room, like Cushag, have all the setup costs and all the servicing costs for perhaps one big event every 3 weeks and a handful of smaller events in between times. The economics of that are just fading away for everybody, I would say. So, we're stepping out of it really before it becomes a loss-making business, which it's, on the verge of doing.
You're going to have two huge spaces then in the hotel and a very prominent position at the front of the building. Have you got plans what you're going to do with them at this stage?
Well, the secondary function room, Shearwater, has already been brought into the Lukey's Lounge Bar. So now that's a bookable group and private event space within Lukey's. So we're really just left with the one big room, the Cushag room. Yes, we are looking at retasking that. It's at a very early stage, and I can't go into the specifics at the moment. We are looking at retasking that space into other use within the hotel.
That is Chief Executive of Palace Holdings, Brett Martin, talking to Simon there. Again, find out more about that at manxradio.com. Now, the stock market report brought to us by Ramsey Crookall. It tells us that UK and European stocks climbed higher after the latest US jobs report soared past expectations. Wall Street stocks were in the green early on as market participants digested that stronger than expected September jobs report. Gold prices intensified their bearish stance for the day, deflating to the vicinity of $2,640 following the publication of that report. And US crude oil is on pace for its best week since March last year, after President Joe Biden indicated the White House is discussing a possible strike by Israel on Iran's crude facilities. That's in retaliation for Tehran's ballistic missile attack earlier this week. We're looking at the commodities. Gold stands up 0.07% at $2,657. Brent up 0.34% at $78 exactly. At the close, the FTSE 100 was up 0.01% at 8,283. And a short time ago, the Dow Jones was trading up 0.18% at 42,083. And the Nasdaq was up 0.66% at 18,036.
I'm running late again. Do you know where I put my car keys?
In the fridge.
Where's my phone?
Under the dog basket.
Bye.
You haven't forgotten that we're seeing Ramsey Crookall later?
No, of course not. 5 p.m, is it?
2:45.
I'll be there.
Life is busy. That's why Ramsey Crookall's team takes time to help you make a mindful investment decision, considering all the options, giving you full control of your financial future. Less stress, more assurance.
Forgot to put my shoes on.
See how we can make your money work for you. Call 717171 or visit ramseycrookall.com. Licensed and regulated by the Isle of Man Financial Services Authority.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, the good news, police reporting nothing on the road, so it'll just be the usual roadworks to look out for. All okay down at the Steam Packet, and just a slight delay on the Birmingham and Manchester flights. For the whole details, you can check out the Traffic and Travel Hub at manxradio.com.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
You're listening to Update. It's coming up to 5:20. A Middle MHK thinks environmental issues should sit further down the pecking order and priority be given to the residents and people living on the Isle of Man. Now, recently, the Chief Minister said it was becoming increasingly difficult to meet the interim net zero targets, meaning government could be in breach of its own laws. Stu Peters says he's considering some sort of a motion to Tynwald as a result.
To say that we ought to do what all the other jurisdictions around us are doing, which is being a little bit more pragmatic about net zero target dates, because everybody's doing it. Scotland's doing it, Ireland's doing it, I think UK's doing it, across Europe various countries are doing it. They're saying, well, maybe 2030 or 2035 or 2050 aren't really achievable without destroying the economy, and that's the pragmatic view that we should be taking as well. We shouldn't be worrying about what Greta Thunberg and her cohort is concerned about. We ought to be looking after the people of the Isle of Man.
That is Middle MHK Stu Peters there. Now, Christian Jones is with me in the studio. Christian, let's just unpick what Stu was saying there a little bit. What exactly is he suggesting?
Well, it's a pretty interesting one, isn't it? Because on the face of it, it looks as though he could be trying to change the law that's currently in force, but there could be some issues with that. Let's just rewind quickly. The 2030 interim target basically means the Isle of Man has to have decarbonised by 35% by that time. And like you said, Alfred Cannon has told us not long ago that the Isle of Man could fail to meet that first interim climate target, but if it is missed, it will be very close. That is in law, though, so if it's not met, it means Comyn and the Isle of Man, which naturally prides itself on being in a UNESCO biosphere, would likely suffer reputational damage. So what Mr. Peters is trying to do effectively, or what he's trying to come up with, like we just heard, is a more pragmatic approach to those interim targets.
But let's just consider the issues he could face with this, because I'm assuming it's not as simple as an amendment.
No, not really, because the way it's currently written into law is such that the dates cannot be changed. It can't be pushed back. Similarly, the percentage that the island has cut carbon emissions by also cannot be reduced. The only amendments that can be done to it are either bringing the date forward or increasing the percentage amount. So the way it's been enacted likely means it wouldn't be possible to change things in favour of a delay.
Now, I think it's fair to say it's not really a secret that Stu Peters is very much of the opinion that net zero is not really worth spending very much time on. If we just throw back to the 2022 budget, when just over £40 million was allocated to that climate change fund, I think, again, fair to say he wasn't best pleased. Christian, just finally, do we know how much of that fund is left?
Not a specific figure, but I am told by the Chief Minister when I was discussing it with him that the majority of it is still there and actually very little has been spent.
Christian, thank you very much indeed. You are listening to Update, 5:22. Let's turn our attention to sport now. We're joined by the sports editor, Rob Pritchard.
Yes, faster my Beth. And just first of all, actually, just going to give you a little update on a story that we brought you yesterday with regards to FC Isle of Man. Now, it was reported yesterday that the club had recorded a £50,000 loss during the 23-24 campaign, and that information came out as part of a financial update by the club at a supporters meeting held in Douglas on Monday. And then we further clarified later in the day as well that an underwrite available to the club had actually covered that particular loss. Well, since those stories went out, FC Isle of Man has released a statement of their own on the situation. I'll read part of it to you now, which reads: there has been some news reports following our fans meeting on Monday evening, which is focused on the club's finances. FC Isle of Man would therefore like to provide some greater context to those reports. Last season, FC Isle of Man brought over 2,500 visitors to the Isle of Man, mostly during the quieter off-season winter/spring period. This equates to approximately 5,300 visitor bed nights, and with an estimated contribution around £1.4 million to the local economy. In recognition of this significant contribution, the club was able to secure agreement with Visit Isle of Man to provide the club with an underwrite against loss for last season and this season, for which the club is very grateful. And the statement does go on to mention that the likes of the board, steward, players, coaches and manager, they're all unpaid volunteers at the club, and want to thank those along with their sponsors and supporters for their continued contribution. You can read that statement in full right now over the Manx Radio Sports Hub at manxradio.com. Well, staying with FC Isle of Man and looking to things this weekend, and after another busy 3 weeks of away games, they return to the Bowl this weekend with the mouth-watering prospect of hosting the NWCFL Premier Division League leaders Ramsbottom United on Saturday night. What's more, the Ravens beat their high-flying opponents in the reverse fixture a few weeks ago, and manager Paul Jones says his players are in a buoyant mood following a strong run of results last month.
I think, we're full of confidence. September's been kind to us. We've played 8 games, won 6, drawn 1. So, it's been a really good month. Some really good individual and team performances. However, we know we've got a long way to go we can improve far more than what we've demonstrated this month. So really excited, and, it's great to be playing one of the current top team in our league at home on Saturday, and hopefully we get to really test ourselves and challenge ourselves and step our performance levels up again.
I know you made some comments after the Bonaldswick Town game last weekend that there was quite a lot of tired legs in there. So how beneficial do you think this whole week without a midweek fixture could be going into this?
Very much so. We've got into a bit of routine of away games and playing Saturday midweek, and the challenging bit is that routine's changed a little bit this week. We've actually been able to train twice, and that's been great. But the lads have actually had, hopefully 7 nights of uninterrupted sleep, and not having to work extra hours to make up for the fact that they've been away from home. But hopefully it sets us up to really go at Ramsbottom on Saturday.
Turning back then to this weekend's fixture against Ramsbottom United side that you beat 2-1 away from home, what are the biggest strengths do you think that they brought to that particular game that they could maybe bring against you this weekend?
You have to look at their goals for and goals against record in the league. They score a lot of goals and create a lot of goal scoring opportunities at this level. They're direct, quick, pacey, on the front foot. I thought we dealt with that reasonably well considering the group that we had out at the time. So I don't think they've lost since they've played us. They've almost taken that as a bit of a kick in the backside and really pushed on again. So I'm sure they're going to be out for revenge, and we've got to be ready to match their intensity first and foremost. And then we've got more than enough to really trouble them.
FC Isle of Man manager Paul Jones there. Well, FC Isle of Man versus Ramsbottom United kicks off at the Bowl at 6 p.m. tomorrow night. Manx Radio will be providing full live match commentary on our DAB and AM 1368 channels. And finally, looking at sports elsewhere, 2 teams have the chance to leapfrog Peel at the top of the Canada Life Men's Premier League during this weekend's latest Isle of Man football fixtures. With the Westerners on a rest week, Foxdale in second, 1 point behind Peel on 15 points, and Ayr United, who are third on 13 points and with a game in hand, take on Onken and Union Mills on Saturday respectively. Elsewhere, another meeting of 2 big guns in Ardern and Drug Unlimited Division 2 awaits tomorrow. Douglas High School Old Boys, who held leaders Braddon to a thrilling 4-4 draw 6 days ago, are away at Michael United, who are 1 place above Old Boys in second, having played 2 games more than their latest visitors. And you can see a full set of this weekend's football fixtures at manxradio.com. Elsewhere, the spotlight in Manx Rugby this weekend shifts onto both Southern Nomads and Western Vikings. The 2 Manx sides head off Ireland tomorrow to begin their respective campaigns in the latest Cheshire Bowl competition. Southern Nomads head to the Wirral to take on Port Sunlight, whilst Western Vikings are on their travels at Aldershot. It'll be a first competitive outing of the season for Vikings, whilst Nomad's only competitive game so far was a Manx Shield defeat to Ramsey last month. And finally, in hockey, for the first time this season, the focus shifts away from the mixed leagues and into the mixed cup competitions this weekend. 8 fixtures will take place on Saturday for the opening rounds of the mixed cup, mixed plate and mixed bowl tournaments. You can see a full schedule of this weekend's hockey fixtures on our website.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. Still no pirate impersonation. Some people will be very upset,
I could build the anticipation, or I could give you the honest answer and say I don't think I'd do it justice.
Okay, all right. Rob is going to skedaddle to the next studio because he is on next with the Friday Sport Preview, so do stay tuned. Lots to come on Manx Radio this evening. Chris Kinney is going to be here from 6 p.m. with Greatest Hits. Then it's jumping in with the 2 brothers, Howard and Chris Kane, before Nick Holt dons that shell suit and gets out the absolute bangers with the 90s playlist from 10. As I mentioned earlier in the programme, if there's something happening in your area that you'd like to let us know about, newsroom@manxradio.com is the best email address. And there are lots more extended interviews. If you go to our website and check out the Manx Newscast section, you'll find everything you need to know there. Whatever you are doing, have a wonderful weekend. Hope you find some sunshine somewhere, and we'll be back with you from 5 p.m. on Monday.